Hey, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I am joined with quite a crew of people. We've got Loudon Often. You want to say hi?
Hey.
We got SD1.
What's up?
We've got JCnote.
Howdy, howdy.
Joe748.
Hello, hello.
And Nichols.
Howdy.
We just finished a boot camp, and there were some forum threads that came out a while ago about are casinos evil or casinos are really evil, and I was thinking this would be an interesting discussion topic, and so we wrangled all these pros around some microphones to talk about it. So what we're going to do is read these forum posts for you and then discuss. So let's start with the forum post that kicked it all off. This is from Clever Better on the BJA forum, entitled Casinos Really Are Evil. Today I had my first experience at just how evil casinos really are. A ploppy in a black suit sat down about an hour into my session and was clearly highly intoxicated. He then quickly started sobbing, reminiscing about his late grandmother whose funeral he had just come from. He was so drunk that he was passing out in his chair, perking up just long enough to put another couple black chips on the felt, shed a few tears, and then would nod off again. The dealer even had to call the pit boss over a couple times to wake the guy up so he could make a playing decision. All the PB would say is, "Sir, I need you to stay awake if you're going to sit here." They just kept letting him play. Over the 30 minutes or so he was there, he must have lost $4,000 or $5,000. It wasn't until he finally ran out of money that security was called to remove him from the table. It was one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. I just got home and can't stop thinking about it. I'm so angry. I always knew casinos would take the last dollar with a smile on their face, but this is the first time I've seen them actively prey on someone. I'll say a prayer for the man tonight. I'll also pray that every AP finds a Caesar's property and backs up a Brinks truck to their front door.
Okay, so for every point, there's a counterpoint. And our member Flooster posted, but are they really evil? After years of being an AP, I have really come full circle when it comes to my attitude about casinos. When I started out, I was excited to go play and take their money. After my first few back-offs, I started to become really cynical about them and started to make myself believe that they are, quote, evil. I went down a dark path with my attitude towards the casino industry and even the personnel, either the pit or the dealers. It really became unhealthy for me to think and behave the way I did towards people I had never met before. If I had done the same thing to, say, POC, Asians, or people from the Middle East, then I would have been really ashamed of myself. I was judging a whole group of people based on the actions of very few in the industry. Most backoffs were pleasant, and even some of us sat and chatted for a while, and they gave me tips on how to avoid being caught at the next place. Soon I began to realize that the people working there were just like me. People with hopes, dreams, people who had kids and grandchildren, people who just wanted to be friendly and have fun while working. Just this weekend, I stopped on the casino floor to chat with the casino manager. He talked about upcoming changes to the casino and the industry. We talked about his grandkids and my grandkids. He actually asked how I was doing and was genuine in the interaction with me. At one local, I have played over 300 hours, and all the pit welcomed me when I walked to the pit. The dealers all know me, and we have great conversations while playing. We even laugh at how obvious the card counter was at the table that they just backed off. Yet here I am right under their nose. The point is, not one of these people is evil or out to rip every last dollar out of anyone's pocket. They are just normal people doing a job. I hate to see all these newcomers to counting go down a dark road that I first went down. Yes, maybe the business model stinks. Yes, there are bad apples, just like anywhere in life. But please don't go down a dark path where you are always hating everyone and everything. It is not good for your mental health. It is not good to start off at a brand new place with an attitude of hate and rage. If you go in with a good attitude and the expectation of having a good experience, you will get what you are expecting, and it will definitely take your game to the next level. If you go in with the attitude that this sucks, these people suck, then you will probably get the experience you are looking for.
All right. So we got two sides to the conversation. Our casino's evil. I'd like to hear just from some of you guys sitting here what your first response is to hearing those two posts. Or maybe we start with the first one, letting the drunk, obviously emotionally out of control guy play and then not removing him from the table till he had lost his last bet.
Yeah, so that is evil. There's no two ways about it in terms of like the broader picture of our casinos as a whole evil. We'll talk about that more, but that action is absolutely wrong and evil, in my opinion. That guy was incapable. They actually have a responsibility to be stopping that from happening. I mean, that's what the law says. So I'm with the poster on that. That's crap.
Well, to play devil's advocate, I posted a video a few years ago called Why Casinos Are Evil. And there were a lot of comments from people saying it's the person's responsibility. Don't blame the business because like the person didn't need to go in there. The person didn't need to place those bets. It's individual responsibility rather than like crying foul for someone running a business.
Which is a good counterpoint. But even though the person chose to consume too much alcohol, there is a point in which they are incapable of making those decisions. To argue that it is on them and their responsibility is the same argument to suggest that if a girl gets inebriated and gets taken advantage of by a man, it's still her responsibility to stop it.
Yeah. Do we believe in buyer beware or do we not? So, yeah, I don't know. I think what's difficult about these topics is defining words, because I think the word evil is a similar word as like the word fairness. It's subjective, right? I think we all have a tendency to want to believe that those things are objective, but ultimately, like, depending on where you're standing in the room, you're going to see it differently. I do kind of agree with the evil angle in that, like, if you have a liquor license in most states, you're not allowed to overserve someone. So, on the one hand, you could say, even beyond evil, this is illegal. And we make things illegal because we think they're wrong. So I can go with it in that case, but I think we're also trying to make broad brush strokes about casinos as a category, which I don't know that it fully fits, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't see perpetrated evil. I see a process of self-justification, one person to the next. People in a casino acting corporately as opposed to being a corporation, right? So they all sort of buy in on some level and they have one small responsibility and they've checked a box, which is I'm doing everything okay. Hey, yeah, that looks bad, but it's not my responsibility. It's just this self-justification process that leads to things like entrapping a drunk person to giving all their money away and then saying, well, hey, I was just the waitress on the other side of the room. I didn't even go to that table. But you're part of the system that has said, yeah, we're doing this thing.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, the objective standpoint is, do you yourself consider that to be evil? One person may, one person may not. So let's take the fire out of that word and just kind of calm down a little bit and say, wrong or not wrong?
Yeah, morally bad.
So I want to bring up a question for you guys as far as like broad category stroke. So I think it's pretty clear that them being aware that, taking advantage of someone's addiction for profit, the further addicted they are, the more evil it is. I would say it's pretty universally. But it's like, where's the line where it's like profiting off of addiction is acceptable and not acceptable? Where it's like casinos, it's clearly they're engineering all their games to be addictive. That's like the biggest draw for them. But like video games, for example, is an incredibly huge industry, and they're also doing the same things. Like they test out all the sound effects and they find just the right amount of like video games are incredibly addictive. Like, but are those game developers evil? So like, where does that distinction?
Like a couple of things. One is the level of harm it does. You could get addicted to Candy Crush or something. It's the level of harm it's going to have on someone is lesser than where people are making major financial decisions while they're bringing you more drinks, often free drinks, quote unquote free drinks. That was one of my favorite quotes from Josh Axelrad. He's like, imagine if you're signing mortgage documents and they're bringing you Mai Tais. It'd be like, well, they can't do that, So it's like the level of damage it does. But I think the second is how much they lean into practices that further that. I mean, like running Blackjack Apprenticeship, there are things I could do that would sell more memberships, but I would say that's not worth it. If it's like making people feel this pressure, I got to buy now, or trying to get people to make quick decisions rather than thoughtful decisions, how far casinos lean into that, isn't it something like the majority of casinos' profits come from about 10% of their players? Because I think there's this thought of like, hey, the woman that cuts my hair, she's asked what I do, and I've explained it to her, and she loves to tell me about how she likes to play roulette at the tribal casino nearest to me, but she brings like $50 or $100, and it's like once a month with her grandma. And people are thinking, yeah, what's so evil about that? But that's not where the casino is making most of their profits. They're finding the people that have the biggest compulsion and saying, how do we get more out of them? I would call that morally bad, like to run a business that says, how do we get more out of the people that are making the worst decisions? And it's going to have major impacts on their lives.
And society as a whole. I say it like this: if we could magically pull out all the people that are addicted, that are essentially being gutted, and where that 10% is, 70 to 80% of the casinos would probably go out of business. If you could just vanish them, and then what you're left with are the people on the billboards that go once a month or twice a year and just have a great time and drinks and spend $100 on the blackjack table. They can't survive on those people. So, yeah, they have a massive impact, not just on that person, that person's family, that person's friends. Societally, it's just a ripple in a pond, and it keeps getting bigger.
Tell me if I'm wrong here. As you're talking, I'm thinking about, the person that says, well, the individual is responsible for their own actions. Those don't have to be mutually dependent. A person can be responsible for their own actions, and a company can be morally corrupt in that their business model, their practices are, we've got people that can't control themselves. How do we engineer it so that we get more out of them? And I feel it's the same with all these studies finding social media, how addictive it is, and that they hire psychologists to make the apps give you alerts at just the right times to get you back on their platform so they can get more ad revenue. Well, yeah, the person's responsible. They're the one that's clicking on it on their phone. That doesn't also mean that practice of saying, how do we hack the person's brain to get them to not stop using the app is not the way, like treating someone the way you would want to be treated.
And it seems like the people making the decisions are more insulated. The only person who probably had direct contact with that drunk, now broke man was the security guard, who had to have a physical proximity. But the person profiting off of that man is at the top of the food chain. And so they've walled themselves off from that sort of criticism and need to self-reflect.
All right, so let's talk about the other side. I thought Flooster made some good points that there are some very just people trying to provide for their family, working in casinos. What have you guys, how have you experienced that?
And this goes back to sort of the alcohol and intoxication point, is that my experience has not been that every casino lets people play intoxicated. I've seen a number of cases where someone was backed off of a table for being too intoxicated, especially in Deadwood, South Dakota. I don't know if that's just a thing in that market, but I've seen it a lot there. I can tell you I've had experiences at tables where I've made a joke about oh, I guess I'm just feeding the addiction. And the dealer has stopped and said, do you feel like you have a problem? Do you feel like you're addicted? And I had to convince his boss that, like, no, I'm not addicted. I can play. I don't have a problem. It was just a joke. So I think the people on the ground level, a lot of times, are genuinely pretty good people that are just feeding their families. And especially like on that point, I think the important thing to remember there is, even if you think the casinos are evil, it doesn't mean all of the employees are evil, and it doesn't mean that we need to mistreat any of them. They're human beings too, and they have all sorts of struggles in their lives. Their job is not easy. They deal with terrible people, terrible bosses all the time. So it behooves all of us as advantage players to treat them well, especially because, like, without that industry, like, we don't have a game. So, like, without the dealer, without the pit boss, without all of them, we don't have a game. So whether you think their employer is evil or not, it's a good idea to remember that your income depends on them. They're kind of like an employee of yours too, and you need to treat them as such.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen protections for players, but I noticed it the most starkly in Canada, more so than any place I've played here, where people who weren't even that drunk, but you could tell they were drunk, where if they were that amount of drunk in the US, I just have never seen anyone pulled off of a table. But when I was playing in Canada, when they were drunk, even mildly drunk, they were talking to, it was pretty clear that, and they took it seriously. I haven't seen that as much here. But speaking to the employee thing, I have heard of casinos where they are encouraging their hosts to, drink with their high rollers, their VIPs. If they ask you, like, hey, come hang out at the bar with me, you have to go do it. And then if they want you to drink with them, they encourage that. And there was like a few hosts who have gotten DUIs from driving home from their job. And it's like they're kind of put in this weird position where, they could totally say, no, I'm not going to do that. But then are they going to get, fired or treated differently? So they're kind of like pinned up against the wall here.
I had a casino. The owner bought me the strongest drink I've ever had in my life, which is illegal in Washington State, to comp alcohol. They brought it to me at the table, and I was, trying to put on the like crazy having fun, so I took sips of it, and I was like a third done with it, and they brought a second. Like, broke the law, intentionally trying to get me drunk at this casino. So to Nichols' point, that's not all casinos, but that situation stands out in my mind.
There's a counterpoint to that too. One might say, so I was in corporate life for a long time. When you're in sales and I'm a salesperson, you think I'm not taking my clients out and getting them hammered? It happens. It's part of the job. Ask any pharmaceutical sales rep how much they're doing it, or a medical sales rep, or anybody.
Yeah, but you don't like bring the contract with you over beer.
That's the difference. That's the difference. They're not signing or making any decisions. It's schmoozing prior to and after celebrating. The decision is not being made whilst that is happening. And that would be the delineation between the two. But that point can be brought up that that's like a normal business practice that occurs.
Yeah. Well, when major financial decisions are being made, I would not feel comfortable getting someone drunk to make those financial decisions. Like, I would feel morally corrupt doing that, but I'm sure it happens in other industries as well.
Well, and Joe brought up the Canadian view, or how it's like in Canada. It's the same thing in England too. They are kind of on top of that in terms of like not letting people get out of control. And that leads us into the whole regulation topic. Casinos regularly say, hey, we're the most regulated industry in the United States. How many times have you guys heard that or heard a casino make that claim? Like, they do that. But the truth is, in the United States, they are highly regulated when it comes to the financials. BSA, Bank Secrecy Act, AML, transactions, that is highly regulated. But the rest of the stuff is barely regulated at all. So, regulation and oversight. Do you guys think there's enough regulation in the United States to protect consumers in casinos?
I think that the studies that show what building a casino in a metropolitan area does to the surrounding community says it's a net negative. It's a net positive to the casino. It's a net negative to the community. And you could say, well, hey, that's those people's, those are their decisions. I just know if my city was thinking about adding a casino, and I think the average person in my city will be worse off financially, emotionally, and maybe have a new compulsion they wouldn't have otherwise, I'd say, I don't want that. If there was some sort of regulation that would protect people from that kind of damage, great, do it.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be an active organization that I've seen in the US that is on top of taking care of the players in that way. All it is usually just like a pamphlet of when the fun stops at the cage, and that's kind of where it ends.
Well, and the casinos are the ones funding and are in charge of that. Does that sound familiar? The tobacco industry was in charge of addiction. They were also in charge of the science saying that, no, cancer's not really being caused by this.
The way I kind of see casinos is they're sort of like preying on systemic problems. It's essentially poor people. They make their money on poverty, and poverty is up in this country. I also see casinos as sort of like movie theaters, where in a movie theater, you go in there to suspend your disbelief. You go in there to be entertained by something isn't real. And casinos are similar. You're sort of suspending your morality, or you're suspending your beliefs about yourself. Like if I'm a poor person, I walk into a casino, I'm suspending my belief about myself as a poor person and attempting to be rich, right? That's the draw. And I think casinos are always going to be there to provide that good, essentially. That's not a good, but they're there to provide that to poor people, and poor people are rampant at this point, Because people who have enough to eat and have a roof over their head and have a car to drive and have a job that gives them meaning. And, when people are not disenfranchised, those are the types that go to Vegas and spend $500 and go home and have a good time. And, gambling wasn't a harm to them. So I don't love casinos. I don't love what they do, but I don't know that I would call the concept of a casino evil or incorrect necessarily.
If you look, you can find a lot of measurable goods that a lot of the employees of the casino are participating in or see, wow, we built this place. All these people come here. Our buffet is the coolest buffet for the next 50 miles. They see winners every day because the winners are loud and get their picture on the wall and get a giant check. The losers slink away. So it's all my friends are here. All my friends come here when I have a party. Boy, we love to come and throw the dice at midnight or whatever. So it's there's so many things that look good on the surface. That's what they feel like they're participating in, is the good stuff. This is a place where people are happy. There's all this hope. People come in with hope, and boy, the slots pay out really well, or so I've heard. And so to me, that feels like people who, if they took a little bit of time to self-reflect, look at the bigger picture, maybe they would start to change the way they understand how these places are operating.
When Holy Rollers came out, I got contacted by the head of surveillance at a casino, and she said that she wanted to talk to me. She didn't agree with kind of the way that we were portraying casinos, which we portrayed them as piece of shit, evil corporations. She comped our room and breakfast on a drive through the area, and we sat at breakfast, and she was trying to tell me the good the casino does for the community, and that they care for people and they clean up highways or whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know this casino, you also provide a shuttle service to the retirement communities in the area, and you pick them up on Social Security check day and bring them straight here. You're not doing that as a service to those people. You're doing that because you're going to get their Social Security money. And so I'm not saying that they don't do any good, but I don't feel like that's whitewashing the fact that they're praying. And I think, to go back to your point, JCnote, that's my biggest concern, is preying on the most vulnerable. However, they also prey on whales. Did anyone see the documentary The Donut King? It was a guy that immigrated from Cambodia, absolutely broke, and built up from nothing a donut empire in Southern California. And he got relatives all running their own donut shops. And then the story turns to him starting to gamble in Vegas and them flying him in. And he lost everything, every dollar, lost his family, lost his marriage. And the casinos went out of their way to fly him on a jet to their casinos, to give him the fanciest suites and all of that. Like, they preyed on him, in my opinion. And if my best friend ran a business that did that, I'd be like, why are you doing, it's not because they're these people I don't know. It's like, no, it's the practices that are morally destitute.
So I think that there's other predatory industries out there, like tobacco, like alcohol, like payday loans. And how have we viewed and treated those industries, which then circles us back to the regulation and oversight? How do they compare to other predatory industries? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Well, really quick, I wanted to jump back to the topic of just like whether a casino or gambling is beneficial to the local community. And I don't have any numbers to back this up, so I may be wildly off base. This is just anecdotal. I think it probably is the case that, like, by and large and on average, it's a net negative on the community, but I don't know that it's always the case. Like, looking at some of these old mining towns like Deadwood, South Dakota, Blackhawk, Colorado, Cripple Creek, I don't know that the people who, like, had their homes in that community could still be there if gaming never came there. Those places may have completely fallen apart. And even just looking, like, locally, my own hometown has a horse track and it's near a state line, and it might not be the greatest thing in the world to have gambling there of any kind, even though it's pari-mutuel and not class 3. But I can tell you it has really propped up like the local restaurants and hotels and things in town. Because, I mean, the horse track doesn't have its own restaurant or its own hotel next to it. It's sort of out of town. And maybe like tying that into the regulatory thing, like perhaps having the small gambling districts that are isolated from the big metro area might be a healthy start, because it seems like that's worked out okay in South Dakota and Colorado and my home state, Wyoming, where we just have the horse tracks that are, they're not miles and miles away, but they are outside of town and they're not really marketed to locals. They're like, hey, come over here, come to Wyoming. It's Old West. Check out the horse races, have a good time, go home.
Yeah, that's interesting, because my perception of it is that when a casino is more in a metro area, like a downtown area, its impact and its harm is not as easy to see. Whereas when it's in smaller towns or out like on a riverboat row, it seems to have a bigger impact on the community around. So that's interesting, that perspective.
And certainly, like, there are cases where the rural areas are very impacted by it. Like, I mean, again, going back to my home state, Wyoming, like the Wind River Reservation has been like decimated by it. Like, most of the tribe members have gotten addicted. There's been embezzlement cases where like the money's not even getting to the tribe members. And if you visit Riverton, Wyoming, I mean, it's a disaster. Like, violent crime is at a higher rate than big cities like Chicago right now. And other small towns like Winnemucca, Nevada, I mean, the place is run down. And it's all a result of like the high poverty that JCnote was referring to earlier, and like the cash your paycheck here promotions and stuff, where they're preying on minimum wage people. Hey, we'll give you like an extra $10 in free play to cash your paycheck here at the casino.
I think that's an interesting question. I appreciate you bringing it up, Nichols, that maybe not all geographical locations are the same, especially a place like Vegas that almost like exists for this, as opposed to bringing Vegas to someone's neighborhood, that could have a bigger impact. I don't know the studies on it, but it's an interesting point. I think going back to the predatory stuff, payday loans, comparing it to that, like the question is, how libertarian are you? Just say like, let people make their own decisions. And when do you say, you know what, I want a society where people that are the most vulnerable, there are some protections for them. And there's a study that shows that when people are paycheck to paycheck, like broke, their IQ is 10 points lower than when they have some savings in the bank. And what that tells me is like when someone's in that vulnerable spot, they can't even think as clearly. If you're thinking, do I get new tires so I'm safe or have money for groceries? Like how am I going to get to work versus feed my family? It's hard to think clearly in that situation. And so, I know it's not the libertarian answer, but I would like to live in a community or a society where there are some protections, to help people out of a bad spot or to help them not stay in a bad spot or get into a worse spot. But, that's my opinion.
It's really interesting how society here in the US has come down on certain things. The housing crisis, 2008, when that all went down, very little of the blame got put on the financial industry and how they were packaging low-grade loans and selling them off as A paper. What you heard a lot of was these evil mortgage brokers and loan officers are selling adjustable rate mortgages, and it's their fault that they pushed this on people that, it was only fixed for 2 years and et cetera, and nothing was on, well, the government incentivized all of this, and the banking industry made these decisions. Payday loans, like, yeah, one of the telltale signs of a poverty-stricken area is payday loan places. And we come down on them hard, and more regulation has been put in on that. Tobacco, same thing. No more cartoons. Can't do anything like to market to kids or market across the board. You don't hardly ever see, at my age, like smoking used to be so prevalent in movies. And now it's just more like an edgy crime thing or whatever. And they have to say smoking is in this movie. Like it's a heads up warning. So we come down on that stuff. And then you compare it to casinos, which are kind of marketing all the above, even payday loan stuff.
I'll piggyback on that. And I know I've kind of found myself in the counterpoint position for most of this, but to jump in the like casinos are evil category, the one thing I do feel like is different for casinos than the rest of other industries is they're allowed to advertise in ways that no other industry is allowed to do. They can do it openly. They can do it on television. Like tobacco, we don't even let them advertise on TV and things like that. I've heard catchphrases for casinos of things are luckier here, or where the winners play, or, like these phrases that are making like marketing claims that if you were Ford Motor Company and you advertised your vehicles that way, it'd be like, but no, that doesn't actually, you know what I mean?
Lawsuits galore.
Yeah. This is going back to my earlier point where the reason that's allowed to proliferate is because we all have this kind of agreement, this underlying agreement that when we walk into a casino, we're like suspending our morality, like we all just accept that like, well, yeah, they're lying to us, now maybe for the disenfranchised among us, they take those lies more seriously because they're, again, like lower IQ, they're in a desperate position, so they're more likely to believe something false. This is how cults recruit people and things like that. When you're in a vulnerable position, you're more likely to just buy into something that seems like a miracle for your certain situation. So I do think it's a little bankrupt that we allow casinos to operate, especially as financial institutions. Like more than anything, the only thing that runs through them is money. and yet they can serve alcohol while you're making financial decisions, like all the things we've already said. So I would, like, while I don't consider like the concept of a casino to be evil, I do feel like they need to be held to at least the same standard as the rest of the world. Like if Wells Fargo was giving you Mai Tais at the bank while you sign your loan or whatever, like everybody would be like, no. But it's different for some reason when we go into a casino.
I want a massage person to come give me a shoulder massage while I've got my Mai Tai and offer me a free room. So let's bring this to advantage players. Couldn't you say that advantage players, since we profit off casinos, that we also profit off of the losses of these vulnerable people?
I'll say it. Yeah. Yeah, we do. And it feels better to us because we're taking it from the, big bad casino. And that's what I want to like make sure we're all eyes open about in this discussion, is that I think the tendency for APs to go right to the like casinos are evil argument is because it makes them feel better about what they do. I don't know. That's how I see it.
Well, what's the phrasing you use at the beginning of one of our talks at boot camp?
So yeah, this is a talk I give at the pro panel at the boot camp, but like that fundamentally you're an advantaged player. So at some level, you are willing to take advantage of another person. Now, it's the big bad casino, so we feel better about that. It doesn't feel like you're really taking advantage because the casino is a qualified opponent, if you will, right? They're going eyes open. They set the game rules. You just accepted the rules, right? But fundamentally, you are taking advantage of them. You are allowing them to believe that they have the edge when they actually don't. It's just keep that in mind when you're making these statements, basically.
I'll counterpoint to that. I mean, I do agree we are actively participating in this whole system, but I want to kind of display an analogy. It's like, so if I really simplify it, let's say I have a friend, he's kind of down on his luck, but I know he likes to play this game. So then I rig the deck. He doesn't know about it. And I say, hey, let's play for some money. I take everything he has from him. That's like, at worst, evil. At best, you're a really shitty friend. So then people will say, oh, well, these casino patrons, they're not my friends. The casino justifies it. They're not my friends. I don't know these people. I don't owe them anything. I can stack the deck all I want. Like, they're not physically stacking the deck, but they are with their odds. Like, it's essentially the same thing. Instead of a 50% edge stacking the deck, they have a 1 to 15% edge on whatever game. So then let's say that same friend who was down on his luck did a little bit of research and figured out that even though my friend is stacking the deck, I can play in a way where I can actually win. If you look at it that way, in those two ways, I think what we're doing can't be considered evil if the person that's perpetrating this rigged system against you is actively trying to take you down. You're just trying to fight back at that point.
Yeah, you're beating them at their own game.
I'd say a couple things to, you say, well, advantage players were taking advantage. And if you said, hey, you want to play chess for money? And I'm like, I'm a better chess player than you. Yes, I don't think I'm taking advantage of you. I'm taking you up on your offer. And maybe it's semantics, but taking advantage of someone to me feels like abusing the relationship in a way, kind of like the stacked deck. But I don't want to take that too far because there is a reality of subterfuge that I'm not going in there and saying, hey guys, I'm a better blackjack player than your game will make money off of. And I am willingly letting them think I'm a sucker when I'm not. So I can't take my argument too far. But the other thing I'd say about it is, yes, technically we are profiting off of the losses of vulnerable players. That is technically true. However, if advantage players disappeared from the face of the earth, the system continues going. In a sense, it's different than poker, where for me to win means a gambler loses. This is different. If I disappear, the people still lose to the casino. So I feel like it's like, yeah, we technically, those profits did come from players, but those players don't stop losing if I don't go in there. They're still going to lose either way. I'm just going to gain some of the profits that the casino would have been keeping. I feel much better about that. And I honestly don't, we were talking about this last night, poker. I think there could be a point where someone is such a bad poker player and making such terrible decisions where I'd be like, I got to stop taking this person's money. But that's a personal decision. Generally, I'm fine like beating other people at poker. We're all making this agreement to put our money at risk at this game of skill. And if I beat you at the game of skill, I walk home happy. Oh man, there's a really interesting movie about this. It's got the George Michael from Arrested Development, Michael Cera. It's a really interesting indie film that I watched on a plane or something where he's really into poker. Later on in the movie, he beats someone that pulls like a gun on him because the guy's so angry that, Michael just kicked his ass at this little home poker game. It's interesting to see, well, what happens when you keep beating someone at it. Anyway, the point being, with poker, I'm fine with that, but I'm even more fine saying, hey, people are going to lose their money to casinos whether I'm there or not. So I'm going to go in there and take the casino's money, not the gambler's money.
So let's talk about the casino employees' perspective in all this and how they view it. What have you guys heard from casino personnel or people that that work in casinos that maybe you don't interact with on a business level?
I think at some level, those people are just as captured as the patrons. Like if you're going to work at a casino, you are just inclined to believe nice things about your employer, or at least less bad things. But they're captive in the same way that, they expect the patrons to tip their employees enough to pay their bills. And, it's kind of the same moral bankruptcy, in my opinion.
Yeah, the phrasing that I've heard, and when we talked about this last night, that's used, I've heard the exact phrasing from multiple people that work in casinos, including friends that I have that are in casinos. The phrase is, I didn't put a gun to their head. They made this decision on their own. And it's almost like a Pontius Pilate moment where they just wash their hands of the entire decision and just walk away from it, and it becomes a non-issue to them. But there is a very big difference between a dealer, a janitor, a slot attendant versus a host or a casino executive.
A lot of these quote unquote relationships we have with the casino are it's all fake, right? So a dealer they're dressed nice, they're nice to you, saying it's all this predicated on the exchange that's happening. And the moments that have been really sort of different or where I was playing at a casino long enough that there was like the one same pit boss every time. And I was so used to being my persona in the casino and assuming the personas of the pit boss and the dealer that I just assumed that's where we're operating. But over time, I'm talking about my kids or I'm talking about things I care about, and we start to connect on this human relationship way. And then when the casino was mean to me and changing the rules and then finally backing me off, she felt on my behalf and was crying. The pit boss was crying because I was getting kicked out and she felt like the casino was taking advantage of me. And it's because we'd made that human connection, right? So I'm a human coming doing my thing, justifying what I do. She's a human working as a pit boss, justifying what she does, whatever. And all those relationships continue in the predatory ways that they do. But if you break through the wall and you're human with each other and you start to see the value in self-reflection. And she was like, this guy's a card counter, but the casino's treating him poorly. And that meant a lot to me. But it was about, here's this one moment in all of my time in casinos where I'm actually forging some sort of basic human relationship as a person.
It almost feels like sometimes when a back off or an 86 happens, I wish it was an exchange like the end of a game. Like, man,
good game.
Great game. Pat on the ass, shake hands after, like, really appreciate what went down.
Sign each other's jerseys.
Yeah, good exchange.
Take a look at the highlight reel.
I mean, in reality, the cat and mouse game of it, that's honestly how it should be viewed, because we are operating on this different level, and same with the casino versus the AP. but that's not how it goes down, obviously.
It would make my day if I had to back off and they coming back off. They say, "Oh man, you really kicked my ass today." Like, wow, good game.
Which, I mean, I've had back-offs very similar to that. I mean, they're few and far between, but there are people that, even managers have come up to me, and he came up to my hotel room with security, of course, but he was like, I mean, he was nice about it, but he was like, we concede. Like, and then he was like, you can stay in the room, but just no more blackjack, please.
Uncle.
Like, it was just,
Uncle.
Yeah. We had one, it was 4 of us, and we crushed a casino in a remote area, and the guy was like, I'm sorry, you guys are really good. Enjoy the poker room, enjoy the hotel room, but yeah, we can't let you guys keep playing blackjack. And that stood out because it was such a rare experience.
Yeah, I think if you play long enough, we've all kind of had 1 or 2 of those experiences. Mine was in your home state in Washington, and the guy just sat down and he's like, you are just really good. We cannot handle somebody of your skill level, and we really appreciate you coming in, but we're small and we just can't take it. So we need to ask you to stop right now.
We had someone on the church team, the casino said, yeah, we just opened up and we can't handle you right now. Come back a little. I mean, that place,
Come back later.
that place backs everyone off now. But I liked that he took that angle. I want to hear some more people being human in casino stories. Casino staff being human. Anyone have Joe, you've got some stories.
Yeah, I shared this at one of our get-togethers. I was playing in a remote location kind of near Christmas time, and I was there for 3 weeks. I decided not to come home for Christmas because, my parents were going through a divorce. My brother was in prison. Like, there was just so much going on with my family life. I was just like, I'm skipping Christmas. Like, I'm just not coming home. So I stayed at this casino for 3 weeks every day until Christmas happened. And the staff was pretty standard. Like, most of them were like slightly annoyed. I was there open to close, not tipping, nothing too bad. But then Christmas morning, I go down to play when they open, and I'm always playing at the same spot, the same seat every day. And there was like a gift bag wrapped up in presents, and it was on my seat. And I went up to play and not thinking it was for me. And the dealer was like, hey, I got this for you. It was this really nice dealer named Glenn. He was kind of like this hippie character, and he was saying that like he wanted to get me a gift on Christmas because he was just like, watching you play for the last 3 weeks, kind of like being out here alone reminds me of myself. He would like travel around the country by himself, and there was like a really nice family that took him in for Thanksgiving, and he just always remembered that, so he wanted to kind of pass that same gesture on. So that was just like so mind-blowing to me because I never tipped this guy. It wasn't about money or trying to get something. It was just purely like, I see you and me, and I can tell you're having a rough time, and I want to give you this. And that was like the most standout casino staff moment.
That's really awesome.
Wasn't there somebody on the church team who trained at a particular casino for the longest time, and on their last day in town, like the staff knew it was his birthday, so they made him a birthday cake?
Oh man, yeah, that sounds familiar.
I've had helpful dealers who, they know what I'm doing or whatever, and then just like, hey, there's a table like down here that they only cut like this much. And, I think of the average casino personnel they don't see themselves as evil.
Yeah. For sure. Of course. No one sees themselves as evil.
Yeah. Like, I mean, somebody is paying them to like pull cards out of a shoe and move chips on a felt, like that's how they see their life. That's how they see their job. And they're not like there to hurt people. And
I went on a trip maybe 5 years ago, and the first session, first table, I sit down, buy in, and, within a deck, I'm jumping my bets up big time, and the pit boss comes over, and I'm like, oh, no. Like, am I going to get backed off in the first 5 minutes of the trip? And he's like, I know what you're doing. He's like, it's cool. It's not my money. Take him for $5,000. Which, like, it was amazing. I was just wishing you would have said 20 grand, but still, like, wow, that was cool.
It depends on, I think this might be a regional thing too, but like I've had them do the right thing as well for circumstances like returning a Tito a slot ticket, or, getting a call because there was a mispay and they owe me money. That stuff happens just like the other side happens when they could care less and you never hear, or you got stolen from and they're just like, well, that's your problem, not ours. You get both sides of that. But at the end of the day, we're talking about people, and there are genuine people. There's also a disconnect. Like the security guy that's an absolute asshole to you when he backs you off. The reality is that he or she doesn't know the complexities of what's going on. Their boss just told them, get this person out of here. They might think that you cheated. They have no idea the full context. So, yeah, they shouldn't come in hot, but you can also understand sometimes when you do get treated poorly because they're out of the loop, man. They don't know the higher game that's going on.
It's easy to, I'm picturing a friend of ours at a boot camp where we had someone that worked within a casino come and give a guest talk, and this friend of ours raised his hand for Q&A, and his question was, how do you live with yourself?
You know who you are.
And I understand the question from our perspective, but also I've never been in a situation where it's like, I need a job and this is going to be the best way to provide for my family. Like, I could say I could never work in a payday loan place unless I'm like unemployed and need like rent money now. Like, I'd think, well, I'd find some other way. But I also just don't want to be quick to judge someone for accepting a job that provides for the family, which goes back to SD1, your point. There is a difference from being paid to flip over cards or bring people their drinks or manage people's, players' cards like a pit boss. There's a difference between that and saying, ooh, if we psychologically manipulate these players, we can increase our profit lines by another 5%.
And that was some of our conversation last night. Like I've been in board meetings for corporations and we're discussing revenue and profitability and increasing these things. And we're looking at charts and graphs, and the data people are giving us all these things. In a casino, those are people's lives and their families. And I just picture the casino executive like Mr. Burns, like looking at this and knowing full well what is there, and they don't care.
Yeah, there's a Christian author that I like. He had this idea of like multiple bottom lines. Ideally, a business should always have more than one bottom line. I guess they could say entertainment, but at the end of the day, they're worried about one bottom line. Yep. And I value companies that value more than just the financial bottom line. They say, yes, we want to be profitable. We also want to have a net positive through the way we run our business. Casinos seem like, F that. We want as much profit at the expense of. That's what it feels like to me. Like, tell me a counter argument, but it feels like, what wouldn't they do to increase their bottom line?
And the entertainment is just a vessel to get you in the door to lose. That's the only reason it's there. If it was the opposite, if they had like a show that brought people in and then everyone left and they made less money because of the show, they wouldn't have the show anymore. The only reason they have the restaurants is because they don't want you to go down the street to go eat.
Well, and they've latched on to that whole entertainment and gaming thing. Like they're even steering away from the word gambling or gamble. It's now entertainment or gaming.
So what would make them not evil, to kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, like reforms or regulation.
This is never going to happen, but more disclosure in their advertising and even on the actual game. So like if you have a billboard that's like win $1 million, then it would have to say like chances of winning $1 million is getting struck by lightning twice in the same day or whatever, that, or like, oh, you have a must hit by 10,000. Then it has a meter on the bottom that's like shows how many dollars have been put in to get to that 10,000, which is probably over 100,000, more disclosure on that kind of info.
Maybe even putting house edge on games.
Yep, I like that
That would
one.
be fascinating.
In England, it's this way. Every individual game has the return to player or the house edge on it. And I would take it a step further where it explains it in clear language, right? Every dollar you bet, you lose 10 cents. So it's plain language.
What about an employee who's dedicated to truth and justice? Somebody who's like user experience or like a guidance counselor's like, who their job is to look at these things, identify, and bring them to the brass. Like, hey, this is going on. Hey, this drunk guy was allowed to play.
I think there should be massive fines. Like, you could lose your liquor license if it's been proven that you're serving alcohol to drunk patrons. It should be the same, like massive fine, and someone that's actually able to see if casinos, you can walk through and see, are there drunk people at the tables?
Yeah, the irony is I think that those laws are on the books.
They're already there.
Your local bartender can literally be prosecuted for over-serving somebody, and in a casino environment, it's like they look the other way because the sheer amount of tax money that comes
The
into
counter
the state.
argument is that people stumble out of bars too, you know? Like, it's not like the casinos are doing any worse of a job than the bars.
Well, yeah, but I have never heard of a casino and their liquor license being put in jeopardy. I know a bartender that he himself attacked legally for over serving. And thankfully, it turned out he never served him. The person came in drunk from another bar. It was just the last place that they were at. So that saved him. But like, it just seems like they'll attack the little guy, but they won't attack the big guy, and they look the other way. I personally think that they should be treated like tobacco, like alcohol. I would like to see all advertisement in that way be not allowed. Or there's got to be like a truth in lending or a truth behind the advertisement.
Like a Surgeon General warning.
Surgeon General warning, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a quick win, is regulate the advertising. I don't know if you guys saw this. LeBron James is now doing ads for sports books. That should not be allowed.
No, it shouldn't. And also the giveaways. I mean, why do you think there's pots and pans given away at every daggone casino? The seniors love them. They love their free pots and pans and their toasters. And they come in for their probably $5 crappy pan and they lose hundreds of dollars, and they were brought in on a bus from the retirement home. Like that just feels wrong. And I know, listen, on the AP side, I know there are many plays that we beat promotions in a lot of ways, but I'm completely comfortable with striking every kind of giveaway to get them in the door that is out there.
I've got a lot of gripes with like the promotional side of things and the marketing side of things as well. In the interest of time, I want to like just keep it to one thing that I think is the most heartbreaking thing in the casino, and that's the free ATM service. There have been so many times that, you know, you're waiting in line to cash out and you see somebody go through the whole rigmarole of checking $100, insufficient funds, $80, insufficient funds. And there's nothing in checking, so then they put their card back in and do savings, and it's like they've done it before, like they've done it a million times. And that finally they get $20 out of savings, probably their last $20. And on your way out of the casino, you see them abandon 12 cents in a slot machine, and it's already gone. You know, that's the most heartbreaking thing to me, is just seeing that.
What I hate about the ATMs is the house edge on the ATM, where there's like $100 withdrawal limit and like a $3 fee. So it's like there's a 3% edge at the ATM before you've even gambled.
From a financial perspective, like background in banking and the financial industry, I do not think that casinos should be able to cash checks, give loans, write markers. Those three suggestions right there, the advertisement, their ability to give and lend money, and the freebies, those three wins would be huge for society, in my opinion.
Going back to the advertising thing, maybe I've shared this before on a podcast, but we had a guy on the church team that was a tagger, like did graffiti, which is illegal, but he had this awesome idea, Banksy style, of creating our own billboards that in the middle of the night sneak up there and, glue it on over the Tulalip like happy winners thing, and it be our own like pictures of sad broke people at the casino, and instead of saying like where winners play, saying where people lose their paychecks. It like do that around Seattle.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean that would have been super fun. I wasn't willing to take the risk of getting arrested doing that. But someone mentioned last night when we were talking about this very biased opinion here, but it was a USD one of saying they can't call it blackjack if it's one of these variants, free bet or easy money or whatever. Like, it's not allowed to be called blackjack because there's a nostalgia around blackjack, like that goes back to James Bond movies 50 years ago. And so people, they come to Vegas and they want to play blackjack, but they're not playing blackjack. They're playing a carnival game, essentially.
Same with 00 and now 000 roulette. Like anything to grow the bottom line, that's deceptive. They shouldn't be able to call it that. They shouldn't be able to advertise it as that. The argument was somebody said, well, then they would just argue that, well, I mean, if you look at the beginning of blackjack, it was single deck all the way down to the last card. And I'm like, right. So that's blackjack.
Yeah, at some point it becomes not blackjack. I feel like when 3-2 goes away, or a dealer can push when they go over 21. I guess the bottom line is there are some very simple changes from the advertising to having someone that's paid to walk through a casino to enforce the regulations that they quote unquote have, to posting the financial decision you're making when you're sitting down at something with a 12% casino house edge that they purposefully hide. They'll hide that it's 6-5 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some basic things that could make casinos less evil, but there is a reality that there are humans working within these that, I guess to summarize, F the corporations and their like predatory evil practices. However, there's truth to it's not helping you to have this me against the people that you're interacting with in a casino. That's a regret. It was easy to do that when I was a young card counter. To treat the casino employees as NPCs in my world, and, when I was in my early 20s, I did that. I then realized, wow, that is not treating people the way I would want to be treated. To treat these as humans, to interact with them in a human way, while still thinking the corporation that they work for, I wish didn't exist or was regulated to a way where I felt comfortable with them.
And just piggybacking off of that, I would say like some of the most fun I have had in card counting is talking to the dealers, asking them questions, and hearing things about their personal lives. Because it's easy to just sort of stereotype every dealer as, oh, the more you bet, the more you win. Oh, I know how to play this game. But I mean, they're human beings, and every human being has sort of their own personal story. And hearing from their perspective, everybody's the protagonist of their own story too. So you get a lot of insights. You'll learn that this dealer's recovering from a drug addiction herself and is working hard to get her kids back in her custody. Or you'll learn that this guy works a second job at this other place, or this guy has tried card counting before. And sometimes you might find like a good advantage play angle from one of them, because there are some sharps that deal cards. Not many, but there are a few. That's one of the most enjoyable parts about table games play to me anyways. So just another encouragement to treat them like human beings.
All right, so let me throw a counter argument in the mix. And I'm not saying this is what I believe, but just in the interest of argument. Colin, you mentioned the difference between what the casinos do versus what APs do. And you're just like, well, gamblers are going to gamble and the casino is going to continue whether APs exist or not. So I might as well hit the casinos. Couldn't the casinos make the same argument? Like, degens are going to degen. Why shouldn't we let them? degenerate gamblers are going to gamble, like whether I'm here or not. So why not do it in a casino?
How are they going to gamble if there's no casino there?
I mean, there's people who will take bets.
Yeah, I think the studies are showing you open up sports betting and the number of gamblers has skyrocketed. Not just the number of gamblers, the number of problem gamblers has skyrocketed. I would say, like, people are going to shoot up heroin, so why don't we open heroin shops all over the place? I'd be like, well, it's going to be a lot harder, and there's going to be a lot fewer heroin addicts if there aren't heroin shops on every corner.
Yeah, that's the argument about the black market gambling that's occurred and whatnot. Like it's going to be people are going to go to bookies, but I guarantee that it was not as prolific when you had to go to a bookie. So you're almost putting your stamp of approval. And the interesting thing is that even when you legalize it, so in the sports betting world right now, the volume to the illegal books far even surpasses the legal books right now, which is kind of mind-blowing because it's just with the interwebs, we have the internet, it's just so easy. So the readily availableness of it all is what has really ramped it up. And the question becomes, are we normalizing it as a society? And I think the answer is yes, and to our detriment.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to present the counter argument that there's also a lot of case study to show that prohibition in general doesn't work on vices. And, even like we tried with alcohol to like complete prohibition. And that's what like started the gangster era in America and things like that.
Yeah, that's a little different, only because like once you give something to the American people in particular, it's very difficult to take it back. And so prohibition really blew up in a way, like in a different way than if alcohol had never been legal. But the point's still valid. And I'm not a proponent of taking gambling away. Even as a capitalist and a guy that leans more libertarian, but I am not a full-blown libertarian. Kind of back to what Colin said, I think there should be different bottom lines, and I think there should be responsibility in things, and some regulation is good. I don't want to take gambling away. I just don't want it normalized, advertised, and unregulated in the way that it is now.
Yeah, it seems like our society is okay with casinos being so predatory. So if we just define evil as like preying on people or making morally corrupt decisions, it seems like in the US, we're pretty comfortable with casinos doing all of that.
Right. I mean, gambling addiction, just by and large, is not treated as seriously, it seems, as addictions to substances are. And I think that's a big problem just because gambling addiction, it can be just as destructive, even more so sometimes. I mean, I've been to a number of suicide prevention and mental health first aid type of trainings. And I mean, you never see anybody from like the horse racing industry or from the sports betting industry or anything there. You see people from all sorts of other fields in there, including entertainment, but you never see gaming people there. And it's troubling because like it's something like 20% of problem gamblers have suicidal thoughts, and around 10% of problem gamblers will attempt suicide, which is way above the general public. The general public attempts suicide at something like 2 in every 100,000 or something like that. But problem gamblers, it's a lot higher.
That kind of goes back to what I was saying, like the amount of damage it does, because you could say like, oh, sugar's addictive and bad for you, but the amount of damage it does relative to gambling compulsion is lower.
Well, heart disease is the number one killer.
Not sugar. Okay, not sugar. Candy Crush.
If you look up a stat, so the National Center of Problem Gambling says 1% of the U.S. adults are estimated to have a severe gambling problem in a given year, while 2 to 3% have mild or moderate problems. Does anybody believe those numbers?
I'd love to see the stats as casinos have exploded, and I'd be interested in seeing the stats once sports betting's been around for a couple more years.
I want to know who funds the National Center of Problem Gambling, because I have a suspicion it's funded by individual members, donors, and earned income. It does not get federal or dedicated state level funding. FanDuel,
Oh
it's,
my
it's
gosh.
100% funded by the industry itself. Again, sound familiar? Hello, big tobacco. Hello, alcohol.
That's a major advertising channel for them.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, we got to wrap this up. I want to tell a story that I feel like maybe encapsulates this whole argument. And this is a story that my wife Grace shares regularly when she thinks about human interactions in a casino. I'm playing at a high limit table in I just hate this casino, in a major Las Vegas Strip casino. And my dealer is one of the lost boys of Sudan. Like, he escaped Sudan during civil war, was able to get to the US, and they're having this incredible conversation about what his life has been. He's opening up to Grace about his life and what he's gone through. And it's this like really beautiful, amazing human connection. And in the middle of it, a pit boss walks over, makes me take my bets away, and tells me I'm not allowed to be in there. And the look on the dealer's face, it was like he felt like we'd been scamming him the whole time. We hadn't. There had been a real human connection, and casinos don't want anyone that isn't going to be losing money to them in there. And so you got the like real humans, and you've got the corporate, we are preying on people. If we can't prey on you, you're not welcome here. The reason my wife tells the story is it was so hard to feel like the guy's like, oh, was this not real? Was I opening up in a sham? No, that was real. We were a human. He was a human. And then you got the greedy, evil casinos that are over it all.
Learn more about blackjack.
So you decide, everybody.
I think one thing we can all pretty much agree on is that the casinos should be held to a higher standard than they are.
Yeah.
What shape that takes could be a lot of different things. It probably won't happen. But yeah, I think we can agree that they can do better.
Hopefully this was interesting for you guys to listen to and ponder. Send all of your thoughts and questions to Joe748 at blackjackapprenticeship.com, and all your complaints to SD1 at blackjackapprenticeship.com. No, I'm just kidding. We'll post this on the forum, and I'm really interested to hear people's thoughts on it. And to learn more about beating the evil casinos, blackjackapprenticeship.com.